Hello and welcome to Radio Spaetkauf. Ooh, we're a podcast all about Berlin.
And my name is Joel.
My name is Yuri.
And I'm Dan.
And I'm Maisie. What's coming up today? What's coming up today?
On this show, we're going to be talking about what's going on at Kino Babylon. The workers have been on strike there for months, and we're now the cinema's close to bankruptcy. And we're going to discuss whether workers are always right to demand more money from their businesses. Controversial topic, Maisie.
Yes.
We might be taking opposite sides in that one.
Yeah.
But first up, we've got some quick news. This is our police and crime report.
There's been a spate of murders. Did you write this, Joel? I feel like there's been a spate of murders in Kreuzberg and Neukölln. Take it away, Joel.
Well, Daniel is a comedian, if you're not aware, and I decided to try and whip some serious news sense into him by giving him all the hard topics, but apparently he's not going to play ball. So yeah, there has been a spate of murders in Kreuzberg and Neukölln lately. On November 7, a 26-year-old Spanish man was stabbed with a knife at Oranienplatz. The man, whose name was Alejandro, was walking along Adalbertstrasse when he was attacked without provocation, and he later died in hospital. The attacker was described as being a 25 to 30-year-old Südländer, which is basically police code for a someone who looks Turkish, basically. It's what they say when they don't want to say somebody's Turkish. They say Südländer.
A dark type.
And they are now offering a 10,000 euro reward for leads on the attacker. So if you saw anything, speak up.
Südländer is kind of, as like racist codes go, kind of Tolkien-esque. That's like a man from the south,
yes,
bearing a knife.
It's as nice as they can get. So this one follows the shooting of an English man outside a bar in Neukölln. We didn't talk about with this one when it happened. We should have, by the way. I apologize to that to our listeners for letting you down. But there was a rather tragic murder in Neukölln back in, I think that was in September or October. Now, the man was outside the bar called Del Rex on Ringbahnstrasse, and he was shot with a shotgun, and he died on the way to the hospital. A witness saw a man wearing a cowboy hat leaving the scene. The police later raided a building and found this man. He was a 62-year-old German man who had an apartment full of guns. And neighbors said that he would regularly bang on the windows of the Del Rex bar and complain about the noise. And it appears that he got pissed off one time too many, and he came down with a gun and shot somebody standing outside, which is a really scary reaction, given that we all stand at the front of bars at some point talking loudly and pissing off the neighbors. But this one man had had enough. Now, when they raided his apartment, they actually found something interesting. Jöran, you might want to talk about this.
Well, the case of the English man being shot was linked now to a murder that happened in 2012 in Neukölln, where Burak Bektaş, in his early 20s, was stabbed to death, and two of his friends were attacked as well, who made it. And now the two cases are being linked, but both remain unresolved.
Because they didn't actually have any leads at all on that earlier case, and it was a complete mystery. Such a mystery that a local German radio station decided to create their own podcast about it. What's that one about?
Well, if you've heard of Serial, that podcast that looked at this crime case in America.
So there's a German knockoff of Serial now?
Yes.
Is it produced by like Rocket Internet? Or
it's RBB, so Radio Berlin Brandenburg.
Okay.
And there's 9 episodes. I've only listened to one, but...
And it's in German, of course. It's called Wer hat Burak erschossen? So if you want to hear a good crime mystery read in German, you can find that one on iTunes and all the rest. Have you enjoyed the show?
1 episode in, yes.
Okay.
I'm glad that we're leading off with murder today. That's very sensationalistic.
Get the sinister side out.
Yes. Well, we've got to get the rankings
cable
up.
News.
The ratings have to go up, and so we're going with exactly. And if not crime, then drugs will get them listening. Daniel, what's our first drug news item?
All right. We talked a couple casts ago about the possibility of a cannabis cafe in Gorlitzer Park, but maybe not.
Well, this one was always a bit of a pipe dream. It was the...
Good one.
Thanks.
Joel.
So, it was the pet cause of Monika Herrmann, who is the mayor of the local city council of Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg, and she wanted to get a legal marijuana cafe in Görlitzer Park as a kind of policy response for or against all the drug dealing that goes on there. And now she, just being a local city councillor, doesn't really have the influence to be able to pull that off. That needs a lot of legal changes at much higher levels. One of the institutes that would be required to sign off on that is called the Bundesinstitut für Arzneimittel, which is the Institute for Drugs and Medication. And they did a review of the idea, and they declared that they will not give it a stamp of approval because it would not actually do anything to improve potential harm to children in the area. And they were worried it would become a draw card for visitors coming there solely for the purpose of taking drugs, which is what they do anyway. So I don't see how that really is a relevant point, but any case. So that's been shot down by that particular institute. I have no doubt that Monica Herman and the Greens of Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg will try and continue pushing the idea, but it's a little bit further off than it even was before when it started.
It's still on the agenda, on people's minds.
It's still around somewhere.
Well, speaking of illicit substances, a few weeks ago we told you about a pollution scandal in a mine in Brandenburg that's sending potentially dangerous levels of sulfur into the Berlin water system, which is nice to know about. But apparently, well, Joel, you know about this, there's been a test of the city's sewage water and they discovered something else.
Yes, they have found 2.44 kilograms of cocaine flowing through the Berlin sewage system every day.
All right.
That's 191.7 milligrams for every 1,000 residents, and ranks
that doesn't
Berlin.
Seem like enough for everyone.
Yeah. It is also only number 14 on the list of European cities.
Oh, really? Who's number one?
London.
Oh, what a surprise!
Interestingly, though, Berlin is beaten within Germany by Dortmund for no explainable reason that I can think of.
What, on the coke scale?
Yeah.
Or just drugs?
No coke.
Isn't Dresden quite high up as well?
Not on this ranking, but why is Dortmund higher? What's going on in Dortmund?
Well, maybe it's all the tourists from Dortmund coming here, taking their drugs and pissing them out in Dortmund.
Well, because we didn't point that out. That when we say that there's cocaine in the sewage system, it's obviously being expelled out of the bodies of people, and they're measuring it on the way out. So it's
unless the cops are just busting into their apartment, it's being flushed down.
Yeah, that's the other way to get there.
Maybe what it is that in Dortmund they're just constantly almost getting busted.
One reason that
whereas here there's no enforcement whatsoever.
Well, the thing that you just said makes a lot of sense, though, Yuri, because the scientists behind this study, and they do this study all over Europe in many different cities, they measure the sewage system. Somebody else earlier today pointed out that it's like basically the biggest urine test in all of the whole of Europe all at once, and they say that because it takes a little while for drugs to get out of your system, all the party tourists coming here who take their drugs and then leave, they're actually excreting them back home.
Yeah.
So
do you excrete urine?
So you're saying all that coke is being done in Berlin. It's just being pissed out in London.
Exactly. Yes. Or at least some of it. That's a significant thing.
Take that.
I love that we're trying to somehow push ourselves further up that list.
Could this have been a potential excuse for athletes in an anti-doping case in the Olympics? No, I drank the water.
It's the sewage, Daniel.
Oh.
Didn't they do a part of the study? Didn't they find out that the time they take the most drugs is Sunday morning?
Sundays are the day when the most drugs are consumed because
Sunday. Which part of the day though?
Well, they weren't clear on that, but I guess Sunday starts at midnight, so that makes a lot of sense. If you're out clubbing on a Saturday night, and that would make sense. And also Berlin. I mean, if you've seen the line out front of Berghain on a Sunday, it makes a lot of sense that Sunday is the day of peak consumption.
So it's just Berghain.
So so you think Berghain is statistically significant on its own in the amount of drugs being done in this city in any given weekend?
Who knows? But that's that. So Berlin's number 14, and it's not just in cocaine. Apparently, we're in the mid-teens on most of the rankings of all the drugs. So either try harder or don't or whatever. That's just the information.
Oh, hey, it's gotten even harder to get an appointment at the Burgeramt.
Oh, even harder.
It was already pretty hard before. But now it's become absolutely impossible to get an appointment at the Burgeramt. There's been a series of reasons why this is going on, Yuri.
For one, you cannot make appointments online anymore. You have to call the number 115 and speak to people. Disgusting.
Make sure you get that 115 right, not 112, because that's the police, and I'm sure they don't want to hear from you.
They'll dial you through. It's fine.
Yeah. This is surreal.
Yeah.
This is a ring of punishment for something. How could you get rid of online?
And how can they think that phone bookings are going to be any easier? Of course, the phone system's just going to be clogged now. Everyone's trying to call in on that number.
A reason I can think of for cancelling the online appointment possibility is that startup that has started fetching all the free appointments and selling them for 25 or 45 euros, depending on how close to the date you want the date.
But couldn't they do that with a phone call as well?
Aha, I'm glad you said that, Daniel, because part of the city's plan to try and improve the whole system with the Bürgeramt, they've come up with a 12-point action plan. And one of the action points is actually they're going to make some kind of new law that they're going to crack down on people who are on selling appointments. So they're finding a way to fine you if you're going to be like an appointment broker. Another more obvious way of actually fixing the system is employing more people to work at the Bürgeramt.
Oh, yeah, that's brilliant.
Here's something fascinating. Did you know there are only 50 employees in all of the Bürgeramts all across Berlin?
That seems ridiculous.
Wow.
50. No wonder it takes so long to get an appointment. And not only that, but most of them are off sick because apparently it's too stressful. And
the rest are very grumpy.
The rest are very grumpy because they've got to do even more work. And now the city government, another one of the 12-point plans is to be open on Saturdays. So, improving staff, happiness there for sure. Of course, one of the things that's not on the list of how to fix the whole Bürgeramt appointment system is just to get rid of it, which I think would be the most obvious starting point since it's totally unnecessary anyway. And in every other civilized country, we don't do this. So maybe if we just got rid of this whole observation culture and just, accepted that people could, legitimately give their addresses to their bank without the intermediation of the Bürgeramt, then everything would work a lot better.
Yeah, but it's about tax, Joel.
Tax? We could
primarily.
You don't need to be registered
Turn everyone
for tax.
into a mini Amazon.
Now finance news.
Finance news. We've divided our news up into sections and we're getting very serious with finance. And if you think that things are getting more expensive in Neukölln, statistics have told us that is actually a correct observation.
Yes, there has been a study that looked at the average percentage of income spent on rent per suburb in Berlin. And it turns out that Neukölln increased the most of all suburbs by 4.6% to 25% of income on average being spent on rent by Neuköllners.
4.6 to 25% of income. That's huge.
Yeah, it's a big
It's an increase of 4.6?
Increase of 4.6.
Okay, not an increase of 20. Not an increase of 20. Okay.
I was going to say, who's paying 4% of their income on rent?
We're now at 25%.
That's still quite significant.
I personally pay more than that.
And that makes it even more expensive than Munich, is that right?
Well, Prenzlauer Berg, Rummelsburg, Kreuzberg and Friedrichshain are already more expensive than the Munich overall city average.
In terms of amount of your income that you spend on rent?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Where's cheap?
Cheap is the southeast suburbs of Schmöckwitz, Müggelheim and Ransdorf. Neither of them I've ever heard of.
None of those are real places.
Schmöckwitz is nice. Don't diss Schmöckwitz.
Muggleheim is clearly from Harry Potter. You can that's not a real thing.
Muggelheim.
I think you've just really offended Maisie, who actually enjoys these areas for cycling and lake swimming in summer.
Don't just make out that it's just me, Joel.
Me too, I do too.
You do too. I remember our many bike trips together out to Muggelheim.
Maisie, give us a Schmöckwitz rebuttal, please.
Schmöckwitz is nice. It's got lakes. There's a lot of East German pensioners there, but so much greenery, and it's just nice. It's peaceful. It's not full of startups.
Are the old East Germans sunbathing nude by those lakes?
They usually are, yes.
All right.
Are they?
Sign me up.
Well, and it's cheap as well, is the other point, of course, too.
Give it a few years. You'll be begging to get a flat in Muggelheim, I tell you. Berlin's transforming with an umlaut. I don't know. Actually, this is something that's happened to me a lot, and it's probably happened to all of you. You go to a supermarket, you want to pay, and then you might have forgotten your bank card, and you might resort to your bank card from the country you come from, because most of us are internationals, and they go, you produce it, and they get no visa. And you get a nice stern look from the cashier.
And all the people
behind you. And that's the end, and behind it, and the shopping trolley gets rammed further into your bum. And but that's changing now. It's a sign of the ever freundlicher Berlin.
Yeah, what's changed is that lately you probably noticed across the supermarkets of the city signs going up saying that you can pay with a Visa card or with a MasterCard, credit cards basically. And I know this seems like a minor thing to be talking about, but it is a pretty major transformation if you've lived here for a while and you've noticed that even a couple of years ago, Like the idea of a credit card being used in Germany it was anathema. They have some kind of, what is their reaction based on? Why are they so against credit cards?
Don't like debt.
They don't like debt. They don't like credit cards. Even debit card, like prepaid ones. So you couldn't use them in supermarkets. But that's all changed. You can pay with credit cards now, even in Aldi or Lidl or.
And in the U.S. now they've mandated the adding of those chips to all the cards anyway. So we're all one great plastic card of unity.
So. There's no real comment on that other than that it happened. And, we are the podcast of record of Berlin, so we just have to tell you that things happen.
The city is still very, very cash-based, and I'm looking forward to the day where you can go to a cafe and pay on your debit card or credit card.
I think it's great that we've slid from murder to credit card technology in 10 minutes.
We report all the news, Daniel.
Okay.
Including, here's another one. Apparently, this is my personal observation of times of changing in Berlin. Went to a club the other night, had to pay €2 to check my coat.
What?
2. I thought 150 was extreme.
Was it a fancy coat, Joel? Was it this velvet coat that you're wearing?
Normal coat. I wasn't the only one who was making faces when they realised how much it cost either. But by that time, I'd already handed over my coat, and it was too embarrassing to ask for it back and hold on to it all night just out of spite. So I paid my €2.
What percent of your income is currently going to coat check?
A little bit more.
I mean, I got to guess that Munich is paying more per person per coat check out of their income than Berlin still.
Have you guys noticed the food delivery advertising blitz?
Yes.
It's everywhere. You can't escape it. Every billboard, if you take the U-Bahn on U-Bahn stations, they're fighting it out. There's like about 3 different companies currently fighting it out for dominance in Berlin. And you'll even go to one U-Bahn station and all the billboards in a row are for competing companies trying to get you to order their food online. They haven't paid us anything, so we're not going to give them any free publicity here. So guys, don't say any names of any of the companies if they come to your mind.
I wouldn't know any.
You wouldn't know any. That's right, because their advertising isn't so effective at all. And they're even using the same puns in their ads. I noticed 2 of the different companies are both having a pun on the word ist, I-S-T, or I-S-S-T, which means to eat. So it means is and to eat, and very funny. But so basically what's interesting about this is that they're all giving away these huge like 10 or 8 euro free first deliveries. And you can even game the system and use them more than once if you're tricky and use different phone numbers. So I think we should all just be eating for free every night of the week, because this is the closest we're going to get to any kind of trickle-down effect of the startup, bubble coming to Berlin. If you're not working as a high-paid programmer for a startup, or if you're not in any way benefiting from it, then take something back. This is kind of like corporate welfare, and use it as much as you can. Now, because I'm interested in these things, I actually was interested in the business model behind all of this. It doesn't make any sense to me that you've got so many companies all throwing away so much money trying to do something that seems to be completely useless, because do we all really need so much food delivered? I don't know. It doesn't seem like such a necessity. But I was interested in how they operate and how the workers get treated. So I stopped one of the people who was riding the bicycles that deliver the food and asked what their employment conditions are.
You hailed a food delivery guy mid-delivery?
Hold up, sir.
I'm a reporter.
That's what we do, Daniel. If you follow my lead, we might have some better stories on this show.
Okay.
So yes, I did. I stopped one of the guys on a bike. He was on a break. He was sitting there. He wasn't doing anything. He was enjoying the chat. So I asked him what his working conditions were. So he told me that he gets paid €8.50 an hour, the minimum wage, and he's on what's called a mini job contract, which means you work up to about 50 hours a month. And the government pays for your health insurance, or part of the health insurance. So it's kind of like halfway between employed and unemployed, but at least they're getting paid an hourly rate. It's not like an Uber model where you don't get paid if you don't get any customers, so it's some way fair. So I don't really have a problem with that. And all of this, if you're wondering, it's all coming from, as I said, VC money. One of these companies has got 100 million euros behind them to burn. So what's 100 million divided by 10? That's how many meals we can eat.
What's 100 million? 100 divided by 10?
Was that you shutting us down, Joel? All right. Ostkreuz. It's our favourite station, isn't it, Joel?
Good old Ostkreuz.
It's become a regional train station.
You and I might be the only ones who care about this, Maisie, because you and I are the ones who like to go out on bike rides in the summer into Brandenburg.
Sure, lots of
I like to
people
go
here
out.
do.
And Yuri, sorry. Do you care about it, Daniel? Let's do a
We're just
survey.
attacking Daniel.
I tuned
now.
out for a second there after you said train something.
Ostkreuz.
Okay.
Ostkreuz was renovated as an S-Bahn station not long ago, a couple of years ago, and they also, in the same process, they added an extra Gleis. What's that? Platform. Thank you. German translating from. They added an extra platform on the other side of the tracks for a future regional train station, and that day has come. It's a year late, but the regional trains are now actually running from Ostkreuz. Before, you used to have to go to Lichtenberg to catch certain regional trains out into Brandenburg, and Lichtenberg's like a little bit further out of the ring. If you've ever been out there, very Ost, Maisie, isn't it?
Do you think? Yeah, Lichtenberg's a bit runtergekommen. I think I'm hoping they're going to put on more trains. That's the big issue I find. When you get a train from Lichtenberg and you want to go out to the countryside and you have a bike, it's a bit like England's become with the railway. They just put on as few carriages as possible and they rock up 2 every few hours and then you don't get on.
I find coming back is always the more annoying part in summer. Full trains. Not that there's a problem right now with the weather as it is, but in any case, your trips out to the countryside will be a little bit closer because the trains will be running. Well, some of them will be running from Ostkreuz from now on.
All right. And in further transportation, Yuri, you've got something to report?
Yeah, I've discovered online a live map of all the Berlin and Brandenburg public transport. A map that tracks all the buses and trains live on a map, and you can look at it and see the bus with a little number go down Sonderlee, for example. And so if you're like just wondering where your train is or your bus, or if you just like looking at it because it's mesmerizing, it's a good thing.
I actually did look at it. It's pretty cool. You see the whole city with like all these trains moving around. And how much time have you spent on this, Yuri?
A good hour a day.
Who's initiated this?
Well, the VBB, so the Verkehrsverbund Berlin-Brandenburg, they've put it online. If you want to check it out, you just Google VBB Live Karte. Karte is German for map, and you should be able to click your way through it.
Why do you think it's been done?
Sorry?
Why do you think it's there?
You know, that's a good question. It's like
It's like, what's the point?
I think maybe they're looking to generate new revenue. Maybe they'll start like pari-mutuel wagering, where you can bet like which 41 will make it to Sonderlee faster.
That's a good one, yeah.
Bicycle news. We found a really wonderful idea to improve bicycle infrastructure in Berlin.
It's something called the Radbahn, which has been initiated by an international team of architects, urban planners, PR people, of course, and startup folk. Basically, Radbahn translates as Yuri?
Bike track?
Bike track, but not bike path.
No, Bahn would be track.
Okay, so basically what do we call a bike path in German?
Fahrradweg.
Yeah, exactly. So Radbahn is deliberately playing on Autobahn. The idea is they want to create a new bike superhighway through Berlin, which will run under the U1 line. You know that, what do you call it? What's the word for it?
High line.
Well, it's an elevated line.
Elevated line, basically, that runs from Zoo over to the Oberbaumbrücke. That's where it would run from, basically. 9 kilometres of it. And most of it's already kind of there, basically, and not ready to go, but they don't have to do much to it in order to make it bikeable. Now, people say, why do it? We've got enough bike paths in Berlin already. Joel's looking at me with with a certain red eyes. But basically, the initiators say that they think that our bike paths could do with a bit of covering. So they're a bit, it's nice in the horrible weather here sometimes. It's a bit safer because you've got no potential idiots in cars driving in your bike path. And also, it's basically predicting the kind of future of transport in Berlin. The idea is that we're going to have a lot more people cycling. In cities like Copenhagen already have them. I think Barcelona might even have one. And it's basically just getting ready for the future. It's kind of environmental prediction.
Yeah, and I think the point of a bicycle highway is always that there are no crossings that the bikes will need to stop at. So in this plan, I think they included a green wave that is timed to a certain speed that a cyclist on average rides.
Right, because there's a lot of cross streets along that line. It's not like there's no cars, it's just cars that are perpendicular to you, which is not necessarily safer than parallel.
Yeah, so at some spots there'll be this green wave traffic lights installed so that if you go the appropriate speed of 20k, it'll let you know on the way if you're
Much
like
too slow
at
for
the
me.
right speed. I know.
And those are going to be powered by the bikes themselves, apparently, generating the electricity on the paths.
Well, I think it's a fantastic use of otherwise wasted space, because what is it currently right now? It's just used for car parking, basically, isn't it?
And there's a path there that's just for like being too scared to walk down.
And that particular street too, we've said this before on this show, has the worst bike amenities of that particular district. There's one stretch where you're sharing it directly with very fast driving cars.
Yeah, on the Gitschiner Straße is particularly bad. There are bits of the path, they said, because the idea is it sounds really easy and it wouldn't cost much money. All they have to do is kind of, put a bit of, basically flatten the path a bit. But there are some spots which are tricky, like Möckenbrücke. You have to get past the bridge. But apparently it wouldn't be that difficult to do. It just needs funding, really. And the Senate have actually taken some interest in it, and they've already granted the project €400,000 to do a viability study.
Feasibility study?
Yeah.
That's often a way that public authorities give ideas the kiss of death, though. They throw a feasibility study at it, and then they spend years on studying it, and then come to the conclusion that they can't do it. But it's nice that at least they've gotten that far. So while we're talking about bicycle news, Yuri, there's a petition doing the rounds to get more bicycle infrastructure, not just the Radbahn under the U1, but others as well.
Yeah, there's a big petition running that's called Volksentscheid Fahrrad, which you'll find on volksentscheid-fahrrad.de. And they have proposed a 10-point plan of improving general bicycle infrastructure. They want 2-meter wide bike lanes on all the major streets in Berlin, as well as 100,000 bike parking spots near public transport stations, and another 100,000 in industrial areas and residential areas.
Where do we go to sign?
Volksentscheid-Fahrrad.
All right.
Well, Joel, I've got some spare bikes at home. I'm actually notorious for buying bikes that then turn out to be duff and don't work. So I now have 2, which are rubbish. One I was ripped off in the first case by a very happy family man who chatted me up and then sold me a nice pseudo-Dutch bike, which then proceeded to fall apart when I got home from Prenzlauer Berg. And the second one was a bike that was basically just too small for me, and it was stolen. And I found it in Spandau. And these bikes now are going to have a new home because I can't be bothered to sell them, and I found a great alternative.
Which is?
Rückwind.
Rückwind is a charity that is collecting and restoring bikes and giving them to asylum seekers. We'll be talking a bit more about asylum seekers later. So if you have an old bike like Maisie, maybe not one that's completely kaput, because they have to do a little bit of work on it, and you don't want to make them have to completely restore the bike. But if you've got a second bike at home you're not using, why not take it along to the Rückwind people? You can take it to their collection point at Lennaustrasse in Neukölln. Put it to good use. Give it a second life.
Okay, Joel, the city's public bicycle rental system is up for renewal.
The city government has opened up tenders to operate the Kohler bike system, which up until now has been operated by Deutsche Bahn. They're those red bikes that you can pick up around the city at different points. Since it's a public service, every couple of years they've got to open the tenders and other people can apply to run the bike system. So if you think you can do a better job of running the public bike system than Deutsche Bahn, there's a 1.5 million 5-year contract open at the moment, and all you have to do is submit your concept. Probably Deutsche Bahn's going to get it again.
But there's a good chance you might do a better job.
Well, I think it's probably not too hard, since
No one's ever used those, right?
Have any of you?
I used them once years ago when they used to have a different system where you could leave them anywhere, but now you have to take them to a certain collection point. So before it was a lot more easy to use, but I guess harder to administer. So that's why they changed it to the system where you've got to take it to a particular station. But Deutsche Bahn hasn't done the best job of running the system. After all, they were supposed to install 5,000 bikes at 320 stations by now, but they've only actually put in 1,700 bikes and 175 stations. And I've got to say, because I've been traveling around a lot to different European cities in the last 6 months, all these other cities that also have public bike systems, and it does seem to me that in other cities they are better run and more used. I'm not sure what is the difference, because they also have these systems where you have to ride from a station to another station, but maybe they're just, I don't know, easier to sign up, or I can't figure it out. But every other city I've been to, these bikes are everywhere being used by everybody, and in Berlin they seem to be kind of forgotten. Maybe it's because we all have bikes already. I don't know. So we're running the show in different sections tonight. That was our public transport and bicycle section. Daniel's decided to introduce a section called...
Oh, yeah. It's probably a bad idea. How about them dolphins?
How about them dolphins, Dan?
I thought it would be good to spend about 60 to 90 seconds covering sports. I find that like a lot of feedback I get from this show is like, oh, I have things to contribute to conversations I had previously not been a part of or was like just a witness to. And people often speak of sports casually at parties and bars. So I thought I would Google Sports Berlin and see what I found out. So there's a soccer team called Hertha who, no, really, a few years ago had been doing fairly poorly. They had been relegated to the second league, brought in a new coach. His name is Pal Dardai, actual pronunciation unknown. He was like a huge fan favorite who played for Hertha for years. Also, by the way, Hertha, no idea. He had 286 Bundesliga appearances for him, so in some ways is a fan favorite, like a natural choice. But his coaching experience had only been coaching their under 15, their teenagers. So they moved over to the Bundesliga. He's also for the Hungarian national team a coach, I believe. So anyway, he's done incredibly well. They're in 4th place. They just had this weekend a 4-0 win against a team from Darmstadt. So what you might want to say as a party is, how about them Hertha? and then you could contribute any of that information. So they're looking like there's a strong possibility that they'll make something called Champions League.
Go Hertha!
Yeah.
Let's hear it for Hertha. Woo, sports.
You know what? I just bought tickets for a Hertha match in February.
At the Olympiastadion?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Are you a real fan, Jöran?
I'm a fan of the team that comes to visit.
Are you against Hertha?
In this case.
Hater.
Let's move on to something that fits any interest of any of our listeners.
Okay.
Radio Spaetkauf.
Joel writes our little intros, and for mine, instead of writing out the full word "want to," he spelled out "wanna" because he dumbed it down for the American.
I wrote that one.
Oh, you wrote that one, Yuri? Oh, thanks. Wanna swim in the spree? Soon you might well be able to without getting sick.
That's right. There has been a plan for a 750-meter long river bath. That's not a pool. It's actually swimming in the river. Along Museum Island. The plan has been around since the late 90s, and in 2012 they've won an award which gave them some coverage and sort of kickstarted this whole process. And last year they received 2.6 million euros federal funds to do another viability study, as well as 1.4 million from state funds.
I gotta get into this viability business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in viability.
Yeah, gotta be an engineer, I think, for that sort of thing.
So it's moved a step along the
It moved
process.
a step along. The viability study has been done, and it has been successful.
We'll be swimming in the spree soon enough.
Yeah, so they checked for a few things, whether the floodwater runoff would still be okay if that was built, and whether there was no sewage entering that bath, and also how they could maintain water quality, and all these points were ticked off. And now the only thing left with a bit of doubt is a heritage concern, because they're building steps on the river bank to access the bath, and there's a historic river bank wall that would potentially suffer from it.
Knock it down, I want to swim.
Yeah.
Speaking of water, Joel, who wants 10 million euros for an old fountain?
The federal government is attempting to give 10 million euros to the city of Berlin, but the city isn't sure it wants the money. The cash is intended to relocate the Neptunbrunnen, the Neptune fountain, which is that hideous neoclassical copper fountain that's underneath the TV tower. A bit of editorializing there on my part.
Wait, the thing with that's so fun. You hate that?
Not hideous, Joel.
I like it.
I've been voted out, apparently, as architect.
It's like
critic.
there's a
Yeah, it's great.
Neptune and okay.
So
that's like What more do you want from a fountain?
It was originally given as a gift from the city of Berlin to the Prussian emperor in 1891, and it was installed in front of the old Stadtschloss. And now that the federal government has shelled out over €500 million to build a concrete replica of the Stadtschloss,
We're back this again.
They want to complete the whole gaudy picture, and they want to return
Gaudy
the Neptune fountain to its original position in front of that palace. So they want to move it from where it is now, which is at Alexanderplatz under the TV tower, to in front of the new palace. And in order to do this, they've foisted €10 million on the city. But the city of Berlin isn't so sure it actually wants to give up the fountain. So there's a bit of a turf war over who gets to have the fountain. So the city government said, actually, we're not sure we want your 10 million, and we don't like you making urban planning decisions on our behalf. So, you can keep your money, and we're going to keep the fountain. So
there's two things I want to say to that. First of all, the fountain was a present by the people to the Kaiser, was it?
No, it was a present from the Magistrat, the Berliner Magistrat.
Who's that?
Which is like Berlin, the city, not the people.
So the ruler of the city at the time, or what?
Local.
It seems like the Kaiser wouldn't need any more presents anyway.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Also, 10 million euros to relocate a fountain. It's not that big. 10 million. I'm sure you can do it for 1 million, and keep the other 9 to build a bike path.
This does sound like a classic, old-timey graft situation.
The fountain relocators GmbH, which is owned by someone related to some politician. Yeah.
Well, I think, Joel, my problem with it is not so much. I've got no problem with the fountain per se. I don't understand what your beef with the fountain is. It's very beautiful, yes. It's neoclassical, but do you know what it represents?
Neptune.
No, because you never looked at it, really, have you, Joel?
No.
Basically, all the figures around it, there's Neptune, the god of the sea, and he's surrounded by 4 allegorical figures, and they represent each of Germany's rivers, which are...
The Rhine, the Danube...
Not the Danube.
Donau, sorry. The Rhine, the Donau. I'm going to stop now.
Not the Donau.
I got it wrong twice.
No, the Elbe, the Rhine, the Oder, the Elbe, and the Vistula, which used to be in Germany.
If only I'd studied the fountain more.
Yeah, well, or Wikipedia, for that matter. It basically, the thing I find really problematic with this is it's typical, it's the federal lot interfering with local government, but it's also that classic thing of trying to rewrite history in Germany, and it's a cliche to talk about it, but when the East Germans blew up the city palace because they didn't want it there, basically it's just about them not wanting it there ideologically, and moving the fountain, which was moved actually by the East Germans in 1951 to that site, fantastically inappropriately in front of the TV tower, just completely misguided, but also quite funny. It says a lot about East German town planning. It's historical, and if they get rid of it again, it's just doing what the East Germans did, I think.
It's kind of doing the same move as destroying the Palace of the Republic, which I find outrageous still.
So you think it should stay there?
Just leave it there. It looks funny. It's entertaining. It's where people have traditionally hung out. If you look at old East German magazines, which I spent quite a lot of time doing, you see images of kids hanging out at the Neptunebrunnen. Now it's the place for, I don't know who, skaters and stuff. It's a nice place.
Maisie, another topic that you like.
Oh, yeah, war water features. God, that was an amazing segue. The SEZ. Does anyone know the SEZ up in? It's actually Friedrichshain, although it seems to be Prenzlauer Berg, at the top of Danziger Straße. The great big orange kind of angular building, purple building. I love it. I actually admit that I used to go there when I was a student on my Erasmus year. It was basically a leisure centre built by the East Germans, of course. Opened in 1981 by Erich Honecker. There's some amazing images on the internet if you Google it. And it was the ultimate kind of modern technology at the time, designed by the Swedes, like the Palast der Republik.
The Swedes?
Yep, designed by the Swedes. Cost a lot of money, and it was basically, I don't know if you know that's an English expression, a prestige object for the East Germans. So it was their showcase leisure centre. And some people say it was like the Palast der Republik for people wanting to go swimming, like a leisure centre, Palast der Republik. And when the wall came down, it kind of fell into disrepair, and it was still open in 2001, which is when I did my Erasmus year. And I remember going swimming and thinking, it's falling apart, but it was amazing. It was quite a sort of retro experience, all orange tiles, and it was very purple and orange. It was amazing. And then they closed it the same year. So I may well have been swimming in a pool that was, had asbestos leaking into it. Who knows? But it was basically bought by an investor. So it was given to the Liegenschaftsfonds, which is the kind of, how would you define them?
Oh, the Liegenschaftsfonds were like a slush fund used to sell off all old East German property, usually
so they decided,
pretty cheaply.
not to renovate it. They gave it to the Liegenschaftsfonds, and the Liegenschaftsfonds, what they did was they said, we'll sell it on the proviso that the person who buys it basically does it up and keeps it as a leisure centre, renovates it and makes it a Hallenbad, like an indoor swimming pool. And a guy from Leipzig bought it for the symbolic sum of €1. We've already discussed it on Spaetkauf, but it was about 3 years ago. And the problem was this investor has kept it open, but done the minimum amount possible to keep it going, just to keep it open to fulfill the contract. But they never defined what a swimming pool is in the actual contract. And as a result, there's no clear definition of swimming pool in that. And so what he's done is he just filled, basically, becken, like baby becken, I don't know, you call them baby swimming pools, full of just enough water to basically qualify as a pool full of water.
What?
And he basically remained within the terms of his contract. And what he was doing, and kept it open for badminton, but if you go inside, you'll see it's falling apart. It's been falling apart for years. I stopped going there because it was just like sad. And then he's allowed it to fall into disrepair. He's going to have it demolished now. And Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg can do absolutely nothing about it.
So the news is that he's gotten away with his long-term plan of letting the place deteriorate and scamming his contract. And the building will be torn down. So he's finally gotten permission from the city government to build apartments there. They got so bad that the city government eventually just said, okay, you can tear it down and you can build apartments. That's going to happen imminently. They did manage to get some kind of clause about putting in affordable apartments. I hope they defined what affordable means.
Right.
Or apartment.
Wow, that's straight evil. God, what a Henkel.
Yeah, that is a real Henkler.
Thanks.
We've got a main story.
Yes, I went to Kino Babylon. Has anyone been there? Well, I'm not talking about the Kreuzberg Babylon, the Mitte Babylon. Has anyone been there in the last? Seeing a few nodding, Rosa Luxemburg-Platz. I'm seeing a few nodding heads. That's good, because you'll be helping their people get their wages. Basically, you may have seen out in front of the Kino Babylon some people standing outside with banners saying this cinema is on strike or under strike, as it says here. Joel?
Yes, so a bit of history about what this strike's about. You might have wondered if you've been going into the cinema what it's all about. They've been handing out flyers, but mostly in German. So if you're international, you probably don't really know what's going on there. But just a bit of background. So the Babylon is a very historic cinema. It was one of the first cinemas to open in Berlin. It wasn't the first. That was Movimento up on Potsdam. But it's very iconic for its Art Deco architecture, and more importantly, because it continues to use a lot of old equipment. So it uses old projectors. They have an old cinema organ in there that they play every now and then. And as a result of that, it actually gets quite a lot of city government funding, 360,000 euros a year. In order to maintain it as an important cultural spot. And as a result of getting that money, they have to have a mix of programs that includes a lot of international and art films. And you might notice there's a lot of festivals that go through there. And a lot of political events as well. A lot of meetings that happen in Babylon. In July this year, some, but not all of the staff, began a very public campaign for higher wages with the support of a trade union called Verdi, one of the main trade unions of Germany. They began picketing the cinema on a regular basis, pretty much nightly, standing out the front with a banner saying, "Dieser Betrieb wird bestreikt." They were handing out flyers to people and telling people they shouldn't go in. And they were basically demanding that they get paid higher wages. So right now, what these staff are getting paid is the minimum wage, €8.50 an hour. And they haven't had a pay rise in a few years. And they also claim that people working in other cinemas get more than they get.
Plus free popcorn, though, yeah?
They get free popcorn, yes. Well, actually, I'm not sure about that. I didn't check. That's poor reporting. I'm sorry. I should have found that out. As a result of this strike going on and a lot of other complicated factors, many cultural organisers have begun cancelling their events at Babylon, moving them elsewhere, and people have been boycotting the cinema because it's under strike and they don't want to be strike breakers. So the cinema has been pretty badly affected, and I myself felt quite conflicted about going in there because I do go there quite regularly, and every time I walk past the strike line, it stirs something because I'm somebody who supports trade unions and workers generally, and want to see better conditions for workers. Now, the owners of the business are two men, one named Timothy Grossman and another named Tobias Hackel, and they say that they can't afford to pay the staff any more than the minimum wage, that the business isn't going too well and that they really can't afford it. And a few weeks ago, if this underlines the point, one of the co-owners of the cinema actually declared that the business was on the brink of bankruptcy, and he's opened insolvency proceedings in court. And now a judge is going to examine the company's books and decide whether it can legitimately keep operating or not. Or whether it should be placed in the hands of some kind of administrator and wound up. So the real question is, does it actually make any sense for the workers of a business to go on strike demanding higher wages if the result is that the business is going to go into bankruptcy?
You know, how much did you say they get funding every year? 360,000?
360,000, yeah.
That seems a very low number compared to 10 million for moving a fountain, for example. You know, so why not just chuck in another couple of...
Why don't they do a feasibility study to see if they can keep it open? And that would get a lot more funding than to keep it open.
Well, I actually did try and get some proper interviews with both sides of this issue. So I contacted both the owner and the strikers, but neither of them were willing to, or they didn't respond to my request, basically.
So I think we should be against both sides in that case.
So I went along to the cinema and just spoke directly to the strikers as they were standing out the front recently, and I asked, what are you doing here, and why are you striking, and what do you want? And basically, the man who was standing at the front, his argument was that the city gives this institution funding, and therefore they should pay more fair wages, fairer than the minimum wage. I asked, well, how can that happen when the cinema's already on the point of bankruptcy? And obviously they don't have money if they're going bankrupt. It's quite clear that the business isn't doing well, so they've got a legitimate case to make that they don't have money. And he said that, well, that was a problem for the management of the cinema. And I said, well, maybe you're contributing to that since you're standing at the front telling people not to go into the cinema. Maybe that's not helping the business, and they won't be able to pay you more if less people are going in and buying tickets. But he was very insistent that the management has made mistakes and that the management should be replaced. So basically what the strikers are trying to do is drive the business into the wall and somehow have the ownership or management replaced.
They should put a bunch of tiny swimming pools inside.
But of course, I mean, I don't know about this as a tactic, because I don't know what they really expect is going to happen. If a business goes bankrupt, it doesn't automatically mean that, nicer managers take over and start paying you more. The exact opposite could happen. A commercial business could set up there, or, the business could just close completely. It's a very hard building to maintain because it's such a historic building. So,
and I think it's also, it's really hard to, I went there and I saw an amazing print of Jaws, on a big screen with like 4 people. It's like a bad business decision, but a great art decision. And so, I don't know.
That's why it gets funding, isn't it?
That's why it gets funding, exactly, to show films that might not get shown at a commercial cinema.
Fast and the Furious 7 was excellent, but I don't need every theater to show that.
I feel like there's an underlying narrative here. It seems like the strike is maybe based on some kind of interpersonal beef they have with one another. It seems like very hardened fronts. No one's really moving an inch. Wasn't there also an incident where the owners were painting the David Stern all over the doors, like the symbol of like Judaism? It was a statement done by the owners, claiming that the protesters were being anti-Semitic with their claims.
It got pretty ugly. It got pretty messy. And yes, this did happen. One of the owners, said it was anti-Semitic in some level. All sides of this seem to be. It seems like it's a really very interpersonal conflicts, and we don't know at all what's going on between the management and the staff. But of course, as viewers and people who go to the cinema, we're being asked to take sides, and I think it's really hard to. And I personally have no problem going to the cinema, even though it is under strike, because I don't necessarily agree that small businesses that aren't making a profit should be placed under such financial pressure. I mean, if they can't pay them more than the minimum wage, then they can't pay it. And the minimum wage, to be honest, it's not that bad. It's €8.50, and I know you look horrified, Maisie, but I've lived on the minimum wage for the past 9 months. I run a company, and I pay myself the minimum wage, and it's not. I mean, I'm drinking Sternborg beer, but I'm getting by, and I mean, it sounds really cruel to say it, but if you're not happy with your wage, you've got to find another job, right?
Wow. Joel.
No?
I think the bottom line is like is whether or not $8.50 is a reasonable minimum wage seems to be more the question than whether or not the theater should be paying that, right?
And that's a problem for the government to solve because it's the government that sets the minimum wage. So if it really isn't enough to live off, then what we should be doing is putting pressure on the government to increase the minimum wage rather than putting pressure on businesses who, through legitimate, operations of their company can't actually pay more than that. I mean, discussion, Maisie, what do you think?
I think that businesses that can't afford to pay, it depends what they went in on the wages, what the wages were. If people have, if you work for somewhere for a certain number of time, you've agreed to a job, you've agreed to the terms of a job and the pay, and you've gone into it, and then you suddenly start demanding a lot more for no apparent reason, then it's probably more questionable. But at the same time, people aren't charities, and they need to live and survive. And if the business isn't viable, as I said, it needs a feasibility study done on it, then they shouldn't keep going, basically. It's like all the startups in Berlin that don't pay people a wage. These millions of little startups. Everyone goes, oh, Berlin's booming, look at these startups. And there's two people running it who are basically pocketing any profit the money the startup makes and then running the whole thing on Praktikanten. And that's it's a similar principle of basically taking people for Idioten.
But like an unpaid intern doing like programming your website and like a minimum wage job paying a minimum wage, that's not really an analogy, is it? That's just two different things.
It's a similar principle of running. If you run something that isn't feasible as a business, and basically you don't have enough money to pay somebody a proper wage, you shouldn't be running the business.
But paying people the minimum wage isn't. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I think the minimum wage is installed like as a cutoff, right? So that is supposed to be a wage that is acceptable. So it's up to the business to pay people more or less, and then if people aren't happy to do the job for $8.50, they got to find another job.
That's true.
Well, so I asked a friend of mine who's a labour organiser and a communist what he thought about this whole situation. And he said...
He called you a scab, Joel.
So he said that the best result would be if the business was converted into a worker-owned cooperative. So that way the staff might be getting paid poorly, but at least they'd have a stake in the business and the operations, and, they would be co-owners of the business. Now, I actually agree that would be a very good outcome. But that's not what the strikers are demanding, and it's also not the most likely outcome given the reality of the situation. I mean, if the business goes down, it's not going to be suddenly converted into a worker-run cooperative. That's only going to happen if we make some really serious, changes on a different level of government. But in any case, I guess it's all up to everyone to decide whether you want to keep going to Babylon. I personally am going to keep going because I still think it's a business that is supporting people and paying wages. And, yes, everyone should get paid more, but standing at the front of the cinema might not be the way to achieve it. I don't know.
It's certainly in the public interest to remain a cinema. And maybe this is the kind of conflict that just needs a mediation process,
Well, that was one of the more serious topics we've ever handled on the show. And
by the way, murder.
We'd love to hear what our listeners think of it all too. So please write into us and comment on our stories because we'd love to hear what the general public thinks as well. Everyone's got an opinion, and we'd love to hear yours as well.
The refugee crisis is beginning to have an effect on our community.
I went out the other Sunday night to play some basketball at my club's gym, and the gym was full of cots and people sleeping on them instead of playing basketball. And that was a fun and interesting experience I had.
So you didn't get to play basketball, but somebody got to sleep at least.
And also, I had a good excuse to not exercise. I was making the world a better place by going home and watching Netflix for 4 hours. But no, I looked into it a little bit, and they are the public gymnasiums. What's that? Places where there's showers and toilets and room for people, and places that have passed health inspections are fairly useful places to put people up compared to a lot of the options where there are roofs. It's more than a roof, and so every different area of the city is being asked to contribute sports space to it, and there's been sort of mixed reaction. The Berlin Field Hockey Association has come out against it. Their argument being that the better use of sports facilities is to enhance integration of asylum seekers through field hockey.
Brings everyone together.
I kind of feel like sleep might be more useful, but I don't know. I mean, for me, it's someone who's struggled to integrate to some extent, sports are useful. Most of the German I know, it relates to things you might say or do on a basketball court. Not super useful outside of that, but it is something where I think where clubs can chip in or the cities can chip in and working together find enough room for everyone to play basketball, but also sleep.
It's your gym is one of many, many buildings that are being used to house refugees all across the city at the moment as more and more people flock here trying to escape terrible conditions in the Middle East. So the Tempelhof building, of course, is one of the biggest ones that's being used. There are 2,500 refugees living inside Tempelhof Airport at the moment, with another 2,500 on the way. And that's led to a lot of events having to be moved or cancelled, such as the Lollapalooza Music Festival. The conditions inside Tempelhof apparently aren't great. There isn't really that much running water and access to sanitary conditions, and this is creating a lot of tension. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a fight that broke out between some of the residents there, which made international news and painted the whole situation in a very bad light. Maybe the news should have focused more on the conditions than on the fight. So that's happening, and also, the ICC, the big old conference center, is going to be used as a place to house refugees. Yep. Although they won't get any access to natural light or natural air because it's just a big closed convention center. It's not really made for housing people. But there's a lot of little actions going on around the city too, where people are trying to point out empty buildings that could be used. So, for example, down on Karl Marx Strasse, an anarchist group squatted an old post office that's been empty for decades, and they went in and said, "Why can't we use this for housing people?" And they got kicked out by the police pretty quickly. There's a big old ministry building right on the river that's been empty for years now, with the lights and the heat running. And the Hans, what's his name, Ströbele, the Green politician, said that we should be putting this to use as well. So there's a lot of buildings that could be used, and a lot more places that could be housed. Maybe one little other quick update on this whole topic. The word, sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say, I do think there's something to be said for providing like the Berlin Field Hockey Association suggested, providing ways for people to be a part of the city is important as well, though. And I see these things on every, I don't know if we did it on our Facebook event, where it's refugees welcome, which is a cute thing to put on your event to make you seem like you care. But I've actually started seeing results of that. An open mic I love doing on Mondays called Monday Night Mics. You looked in the second row and you're doing crowd work. You're like, "Where are you guys from?" Syria. What are you doing here? We ran away. And I do think there is something to be said for reaching out and making an effort or just finding people who. I mean, it's fun to tell jokes to people who.
I hope you didn't pick on the Syrians in the front row of your show.
Yeah, I did, because
you don't burn the Syrians, do you?
Of course I did. Of course I did, because that's what you do. And you don't give them the same treatment you give everyone? No, that's a fun thing to do with jokes.
I agree.
So there's actually a lot of opportunities to help volunteer and help refugees. Maisie, you know a bit about this.
Yes, I volunteer at the Tempelhof Airport every now and then in the Kleiderkammer, which is basically just handing out clothes. And you can sign up to do that as a volunteer if you have time and the inclination. And it's only basically every shift is a couple of hours, so it really takes no time at all, especially if you live in the Neukölln or Kreuzberg area. And I think if you look under volunteer planner, you'll find it. That's probably the quickest way. And I agree with the whole sort of integration of refugees thing that Daniel's saying. Is I think they basically are quite separate. And my feeling at Tempelhof is that it is basically like this great big kind of encampment. And you see them, and I remember cycling down there the first time and just thinking, oh, they're real refugees, real Syrians, walking, looking at them like they were kind of other people. And I think it's a kind of weird feeling for them, feeling like that they've kind of just been dropped here. And to feel that they're not out of the ordinary is probably something that they'd benefit from, to feel welcome and integrated.
So where do you sign up?
Volunteer planner is how I've found it. I think also Tempelhof Hilft is one of them. And basically you sign up and it just shows you what you can volunteer for. There's all sorts of different things. So if you don't want to go to the Kleiderkammer, you can hand out food. They need people to build stuff for the children, for the nurseries. Basically, they need as much help as they can get. And the thing is, if we all, it sounds really patronising, if we all contribute a couple of hours, a week, it does make a big difference.
Well, I looked at the site and there was one question I had about, it said something about requiring a police paper. What's that about?
You need to get a Führungszeugnis, but they've made it quicker for people, or easier for people. I had one, but most people don't have one. It's basically just a reference from the police saying you're legit, you're not a kiddie fiddler, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and basically they'll run that check for you because there are children in there.
So
and
they
you're
do it
coming
for
into
you
contact
there,
with children. Basically they take your passport. So you take your passport along, you sign up, and also you can drop out. So if you do sign up and you think I can't do this, you can drop out again. It's not like you're totally bound to it, but it's good to not do it all the time.
So they do all the hard work for you?
They do all the hard work for you, and they're really nice people.
It's time for the Spaetkauf news, and not meaning that the news from us, but news about Spaetkaufs.
Spaetkaufs could become an election topic in next year's city government campaign.
Yeah, so we can't really be sure where this impulse is coming from. Maybe that petition that we reported on has met some open ears in politics somewhere. In any case, the Greens have put forward a proposal to change the, to me, silly Sunday can't be open laws, and have put it forward to the Senate. Now, there has been a bit of mixed feedback. The SPD has already party internally voted against it, 54 to 46%. But the commercial administration of the Senate has been commenting in favor.
So the SPD is against opening Spaetkaufs on Sundays?
Yes.
So if you don't like that, then don't vote for the SPD. Like I said, I think we need the Spaetkauf party headed by Yuri. We'll see if we get that up in time for the ballot next year. And the Green Party are the ones in favour of it, is that right?
Yes, they're the ones putting forward the proposal. And a reason that the SPD has named for keeping that law up is in favour of the Sonntagsruhe, which is peace and quiet on a Sunday. How fucking antiquated is that?
We're breaking it right now.
Okay, and also we have a lead on why there's been this crackdown along Karl Marx.
Well, that's right. It seems like it's only one area of Neukölln that's really getting hit hard by the Ordnungsamt. I mean, it's illegal everywhere, but it happens. And there's just one part of Neukölln where, if you go through, you'll find you can't get a beer at all on a Sunday. And I've always wondered why it is. It seems like it's very geographically bound. It's like one street to the next that shop is prosecuted and this one's not. And the good old Taz newspaper actually took up this issue, and they found out that there is one police commissioner who's on some kind of holy mission in his little district, which is right around Neukölln, to make sure that the Spaetkaufs stay closed. And his name is Robert Ruf, the Polizei Oberkommissar.
Alliteration, like it's a comic character.
Abschnitt 54, and his nickname is the Sheriff.
Oh, God.
Sheriff Spaßverderber. Yeah.
Like, really. And he told the paper that he's actually made it his personal mission to make sure that the Spaetkaufs do stay closed, even though this is not actually a police issue. The Spaetkauf opening law is an issue for the Ordnungsamt, which is another whole branch of government. But he's overstepping his powers and going in there with the police to make sure they close.
It's one rogue cop. This is like the worst police move. Rogue Robert, the Sheriff Roof, has one goal, and that's to shut down Spadies.
Yeah, do you reckon
coming this summer. The most boring movie ever.
Yeah.
Do you reckon he walks around with a voice recorder and just talks to himself through the case?
The chief drags him into his office. He's like, "You've gone too far, Ruff."
They were closing in on me. Daniel, wasn't your mum really into that party silencing mime idea?
She likes the idea of ideas in general.
Yeah, right. So she might be disappointed now, hey, Joel.
Because apparently the mimes are getting the chop. The mimes who were given another feasibility study money to go around Friedrichshain shushing people to keep them quiet in a creative... Do that again, Jöran. For our listeners at home,
No.
Jöran has just demonstrated his
They
wonderful...
don't.
You're even like wearing a little black and white skivvy. You're almost dressed for the part.
Just the makeup.
So they got money. They were going around this summer in Friedrichshain, creatively shushing noisy people.
Who gave them money?
The city government gave
What, for people to put their hand out in people's faces as if to shush them?
a white gloved hand.
Oh my God, that's so provocative. That would make me so angry. Imagine if you've had a few drinks.
Yeah.
Did they all get beaten up?
Well, apparently it was a failure. The city government,
No shit.
after the trial period ended, they gave a review of it, and they've decided that it was a failure. Even the mimes themselves admitted that they couldn't get the drinkers to understand what was going on.
Which idiot okayed that? Was it Robert Hoof? Like Bedfellows?
What I like here is that the mimes, like all avant-garde artists, they're blaming that the public didn't understand their work. You know? So maybe they should just, try some more direct approaches, like a sign saying "be quiet" or, tipping water from a balcony.
It was probably
Wow.
a fun one-semester project at the mime school.
They had fun for one summer at least.
Guerrilla shushing.
We've also got an update on another story we did last week about the garbage bins being.
Oh, this is an embarrassing one.
I think we have to admit that we got punked.
Yeah.
So the
We got
garbage.
ad busted.
We got ad busted. The garbage bins have got a message on them currently saying, give me TTIP, TTIP being the transatlantic trade agreement that's being negotiated that's going to flood Europe with cheap imports and destroy working conditions and all the rest. And I commented last episode about how interesting it was that the BSR, the company that runs the bins, had decided to use their bin space to advertise against TTIP, and I thought that was very progressive of them. Mm-hmm. But on closer inspection, I noticed that there was something odd about the stickers, and what caught my eye? The font, because I'm a font nerd, and I looked closely at the font on the stickers and the font on all the other slogans, and there's a difference. So I'm pretty sure that those stickers were not authorized by the BSR.
It's likely. Why
highly
would the BSR make a political statement on their bids? We should have been more savvy last
Yeah.
time.
At least those culture jammers got their time on our airwaves to have their views heard, which I assume was partially the point.
Can we pretend we were in on the joke?
Was it Banksy?
Ah, we knew. Was it Banksy?
Okay, so that's the end of the show, isn't it?
We've come to the end of the show, but before we go...
Yes.
We'd like to say a thank you to Victoria Lincoln. How do you pronounce your name? Ling Chong. Thank you very much, Victoria, for filming the show.
Yeah, and thank you to Donna 115, where we record all these events, and Chad for hooking up all our microphones to
Thank
things.
you.
Thank you, Chad.
And then we'll be back here in January. Have we confirmed a date?
January 11th.
And also, we decided, this is something that I haven't even told the team about yet, but you might have noticed I've been a little bit more active in pushing out news on social media, so I want to keep that up, and I really want to also improve our newsletter. So I encourage you to sign up to our Radio Spaetkauf newsletter. We're going to send out a weekly update of little topics. You can do that on our Facebook page.
I'll do that. That sounds great.
I got one new sign up. Fantastic.
Way.
Where do you sign up?
On our Facebook page currently, and on our revamped website, which will be launched early next year. Everything's going to get better next year.
It's amazing.
I know. I'm so looking forward to next year. Oh my God.
And that's when you'll hear from us next. So enjoy your Christmas, New Year period.
But we forgot to thank a very key part of this evening, didn't we? The audience.
Oh, thank you, audience.
Give yourselves a round of applause
Thank you for coming.
Radio Spaetkauf.